Hi, my name is Larry and you're watching Learn It with Larry, and today it's gonna be a little different because we're not talking about the video part of your operation, but we will be talking about audio. Now there's a saying that audio is always half of the picture. So with Blackmagic ATEM Mini, they provided you an advanced control for your audio inputs. Now, let's go to our software control. In your software control, you will see your audio page right here. All of your audio inputs coming from the embedded audio from your HDMI sources will be presented as cam 1 to cam 4. Okay? It also gives you tally indicators to indicate which of the cameras are currently turned on. Now, remember the two microphone inputs? There are two microphone inputs controlled as well independently. Now let's dive in deeper. First, you have your input levels right here. Now this is what they normally call as normalizers. So you have your audio sources, you first normalize it to make sure that they're on the same level. In here you have this knob. So right now you should be hearing my voice and I pumped it up to plus 6 dB. So you should hear the difference right now. If I bring it back to 0, which was my original setting, then you have your 0 dB right there. That's you normalizing the dB level of your input. Every input has a 6-band equalizer and a dynamics control. We will talk about equalizer and dynamics in a little while, but first I'll just want to show you this. So this is basically your fader controls. Again, very similar to how a fader control works in an analog mixer. And you also have your panning right here, wherein you can pan to the left and pan to the right, or just keep it in the middle. This is specifically useful if you're using a discrete audio channels. Let's say you have two discrete audio channels from a single source that you just want to use, like say the left channel, just the right channel, or present both channels at the same time. You have an on button if you want to turn on that audio, or you do an AFV. AFV means audio follow video, meaning that audio track which is embedded to a specific video source will not go on air or will not go to your master output if that source is not turned on. For example, here, if I do AFV on my input number 1, and in my program out, I say I want to, let's just bring in video source here very quickly. Let's say I'm gonna open up my media player 1. I'm gonna assign that there. It's already assigned. So now look at this. This is your audio control. If I switch to my media player number 1, you will see in our program. So as you can see, there's an audio coming out of my camera number 1, or input number 1, but nothing comes out of my master. So it gives me that control wherein only the audio that's tied up to a particular source will only go on air if that particular camera source is on air. Applications, let's say you're doing an interview, let's say you're doing a Skype interview, and then you want a laptop source that has an audio in it that's just gonna go on air once the speaker starts, or when you start to switch for that speaker to start. So that's a typical application. It won't be applicable if you're doing a talk show wherein people are talking to each other. Of course, you want the microphones to be turned on all the time, or else you're gonna cut their audio in cases wherein they want to talk about something like right away. In this case, let's just keep our audio turned on, and then now it's back on air. That's the basic ones. Now let's go to the advanced control. As I said, ATEM Mini has been one of the most basic switchers out there in the market, but the controls that you have with it is pretty advanced. So you have your DVE function, you have your advanced chroma keying function, and now you also have advanced audio controls. Let's go with that advanced control part. Now let's open equalizer. So as you can see, my audio right now is already calibrated or equalized because again, I'm not sitting in our studio, I'm sitting in our living room, in our home, and this is not really something that is an ideal setup. However, because of my audio controls right here, I can somehow tweak the audio to make it sound pleasing. Here's what I did here. So first of all, this is your EQ setup. ATEM Mini comes with 6-band equalizer. So meaning you have your 6 different frequency bands that you can tweak. First things first, let's look at the parameters. These are your bands. Now, every band has a specific frequency that's assigned to it. So let's say in my band 1, you have your 46 Hertz, and band 6, I have 12 kilohertz right here. Again, if you look at it, every band has its own frequency, and if that specific frequency is set, it means that you are working on that specific frequency. Now, there are different types of filters. The first filter that you see is this in band number 1. This is a high pass filter. So basically what it does is it allows frequency that's higher than what you set. So for example, here in this EQ number 1 or band number 1 of our EQ, we set a frequency of 46 Hertz. So what it does is if you have a high pass filter applied to it, it will only allow frequencies above 46 Hertz. Anything below 46 Hertz will be discarded. So that's how a high pass filter is. So if you have high pass filter, you also have a low pass filter. In this case, a low pass filter, as the name implies, it's a filter that allows low frequencies to pass. So what happens in our setup right now is I assigned high pass filter in band number 1. So this filter allows frequencies above what I set. And in band number 6, I put a low pass filter that allows frequencies lower than what I set to pass. Basically put a border of frequencies right there. Now, so just so you know, human hearing is capable of hearing frequencies from 20 Hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz. So yeah, that's your border. There are other filters available. Now let's have a look at it again. In band number 2, I applied the low shelf filter. So in this case, band number 2, let's say I set it at 58 Hertz. Okay, if I increase this, take a look. So what it does is it increases the frequencies of anything that's lower than what we set. From the word itself, low shelf. You also have high shelf filter. If you have low shelf, you have high shelf. In high shelf filter, it's different because it allows you to increase or decrease the level of the frequencies above what you set. Again, the total opposite of your low shelf filter. So if you notice here, if I do this, it increases all the frequencies above 60 Hertz. Alright, so put this back. Those are your shelf filters. Now, there's another filter right here, which is what you call the bell. A bell is basically a combination of your low shelf and high shelf. If low shelf affects the lower frequencies and high shelf affects higher frequencies, bell is basically affects the surrounding frequencies. So if I do this and I say, if I increase the level of number 3, so you will see that it affects both the low end and the high end frequencies, or the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies of what you set. So 163. Again, here allows you to change the level of that, and this Q factor basically it narrows or widens the range. For example, in this case, if I give a higher value, it actually narrows the range. This is specifically helpful if you're looking for a specific frequency. But if I have a lower Q factor value, it actually widens the range. If let's say you want to apply EQ to a specific voice, then you can do that, because you basically look for that specific frequency, and then there will be surrounding frequencies that you want to affect. Then that's where the bell function works very well. Now I want to show you this. What I did in my EQ1. You're gonna hear some changes in the audio that you hear. So again, as I said, I'm sitting in our living room, and there's a lot of electronic noise running around with our electronics in the house, and there's some crackling. I don't know from where it's coming from. So what I did is I applied some EQ effects on it. So how did I come up with that? So if I normalize this, you will see that that's basically the audio without any EQ functions that we added to it. So it's really bothersome. So first I kind of think, okay, is it a high frequency or a low frequency? So obviously it's a high frequency noise. From there, what I did is I took on my bell and then I adjust my Q factor to the highest possible value, which is 10, and I raised it. Okay, now again, you're gonna hear some noise in here, and then from here you will notice that the noise is there. You hear it as I move this along, so you will hear that noise. So then I realized that my value is actually somewhere right, somewhere right here. Now, after I identified it, what I have to do next is to basically reduce the noise. You might still be hearing some noise there because, again, it's not very specific frequency that we're just tackling. There's basically a range of frequencies that we have to change. In that case, I have to apply the high shelf filter. So this is just a talking head. So all the frequencies above that specific point will be reduced, and that's what I did there. So that's your EQ. So there's a lot of things you can do with your EQ if you want to enhance the voice of your speaker, if you want to put more bass, or you want to reduce the high frequencies of the voice and make it sounds pleasant or sounds full or whole. That's where you apply your EQ settings. Now, that's your EQ settings, and you will see here from your software control that you have an indicator of your audio. Now, let's go to dynamics. I'm running input number 2 so we won't disrupt our audio recording. What happens here is there are 3 functions. So you have your limiter, you have your compressor, and then you have your expander and gate. I'm going to talk about it in a very basic manner, but what I can really suggest is if you can just try this and then play with the settings, because you're gonna learn more from that rather than me talking about these functionalities. All right, so first up is limiter. Okay, now let's say you are streaming via OBS. Let's open our OBS. When you look at the master output of your OBS right here, you will see that from the graph you are looking at about -8. After -8 dB, your graph here becomes red. In live production, you have to avoid that red. So that's what you do. You basically set a limit. So in this case, what happens here is I have to set my threshold to -8. Oops, sorry, other way. So what happens there is anything above -8 will be stopped. That's how you begin your limiter. Now, when we go to compressor, so what happens there is if you set a certain threshold, let's say, okay, Mr. ATEM, put the threshold of my signal. So if anything reaches above -8 dB fs, I want you to compress it. And then ATEM will ask you by how much. Then, okay, compress it by 2:1. So in that case, anything above that, it doesn't just limit it. It basically provides you with a compression ratio. So it just doesn't clip it or it just doesn't stop it. It kind of adjusts it for you. So again, that's a very, very helpful way for you to work on if you are running a live production with multiple audio sources. Then you have your expander and gate right here. So you can select whether you want to run expander or gate. When you talk about expansion or using expander, you are emphasizing on the differences in volume by lowering the level of soft parts of the signal relative to the level of louder parts. This is something that you can apply creatively because you can use the expander to emphasize the difference between your high and quiet or soft audio signals. Now again, it asks you for threshold, for the range of frequencies, and for your ratio as well. Gate, on the other hand, is exaggerated form of expansion or expanding. It reduces the level or even silencing the parts of a signal that fall below a certain level in order to reduce or eliminate noise in quiet parts of a recording. For example, a range of 15 to 20. Let's say we put at 18 dB. Can actually reduce breathing in vocal tract but leaves enough to sound natural. So for example, if you have a voice talent or if you have a presenter or a host that you can hear a lot of his breathing, when you set the range between 15 to 20 dB, let's say I put it at 18, basically reduces that breathing frequency but doesn't really make it sound unnatural. So it still keeps its natural voice. So, that's something that's very useful. useful. Well, that's it. I know there's a lot of things that you can do with the audio part of ATEM Mini and your advanced audio controls for it, and the best way really to work it out is to practice, experiment, and then see how every function relates to one another. In audio, you have to remember less is more. The more you process the audio, sometimes the more it sounds unnatural or compressed, unless you want to run electronic music. Again, my name is Larry. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in our next videos.